All right, guys, welcome to Tiger Schulmann's Kickboxing Corner for UFC 158. Good event.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm Thad Campbell. This is my assistant, Craig Alexander. I'm the head instructor here at Tiger Schulmann's in Feasterville. I've been here for 10 years. I was a professional kickboxer. My assistant, trying to say that twice fast. My assistant's been training with me now for 8 years. Sterling record, 10-3-1 as an amateur MMA fighter. Got a fight coming up pretty soon I'm very excited about, and hopefully turning pro very soon. I want to go over what happened on Saturday night at the UFC like we always do in the Kickboxing Corner. It's not a goal to recap the UFC, but to pick some of the kickboxing events and tell you how they worked, what's going to make them work for you, God forbid you're ever in a self-defense situation. That's why we watch the UFC. Well, he watched it because he wants to fight there someday. I watch it because I want to see what techniques are working, how are they being used, what is one person seeing from the other person that's going to make them try a certain technique, right? And then how do they apply it and make it work for them? So first thing I wanted to talk about, a newcomer to the UFC, Jordan Meehan.
Yeah.
Young guy. Was in Strikeforce, which was an event that was taken over by the UFC, and Strikeforce folded, closed its doors, and some of the fighters came over to UFC. Only 23, 24 years old, Jordan Meehan, had some success in Strikeforce, but the UFC threw him in against Dan Miller. One of their real tough veterans, a guy who's known for how tough he is, always puts on great fights. And Dan Miller was dropping from 185 down to 170 pounds and looked like a very tough test for Jordan Meehan. So I want to talk about what was happening in the fight, how this fight went down, and Jordan Meehan eventually very successful. Now, at the beginning of the fight, almost the only submission of the night, Dan Miller was able to take Jordan Meehan down to the ground, put him in a real nice armbar. Meehan rolled out of it. Being lanky, he was flexible and rolled out of the armbar, was able to get back to his feet, and then didn't make the same mistake twice. The advantage that Meehan had over Dan Miller was reach. He was much longer, much leaner, and he used his reach to perfection to end this fight. Now, what punch are we going to use if we have a reach advantage?
Jab.
We're going to use our jab, our most common technique. Now, you may have a reach advantage even over an attacker that's bigger than you, because most attackers are going to win punches. They're going to throw haymakers like this. Now, if Joshua just throws a nice straight jab, he can hit me, Craig can hit me from a much closer distance than I can hit him. Now, if I know how to punch and I'm throwing straight punches, now I have the advantage even if he knows how to throw straight punches. And that's exactly what Jordan Meehan did. As they got up, you saw he started to take control of the stand-up with his punching. Looked like Dan Miller was getting a little bit tired from all the exertion on the ground. And Meehan, jab to the jaw, two of them in a row. Through the first jab, a strong, a power jab. That's what we practice every day in class. Not a flicking boxing jab where his weight's going the other way, but his body weight in, back out again. Now, Miller started to get stunned. Meehan throws a right hand. It didn't even really hit, but Miller fell down really from the two jabs. After he fell down, Meehan pounced on him. The ref very kindly stepped in, stopped the fight before Miller took too much damage. Very good example of what happens when you throw your jab with power and you throw it with accuracy. Now, when we're teaching class, what do we always tell our students to do?
Have somebody look at a picture on the back.
Take a picture from your head, a face, and put it on the back. Somebody that maybe raises your ire a little bit, someone you're not too happy with that particular day, and use their face, not only for motivation to train a little harder, but as a target, something to aim at. And Meehan, obviously, unbelievable accuracy, because both his jabs literally right on the bottom of the jaw, the hinge below the upper teeth, where that hinge is going to make it less tight and easier to do damage right there. Knocks out Dan Miller, ref stoppage, right? Next fight I want to talk about. How can you apply? TJ Dillashaw, Issei Tamura. Issei Tamura, a big knockout in his UFC debut, was dropping down to his more normal weight class, and big things expected of him. TJ Dillashaw didn't let that happen. Took the spotlight. TJ Dillashaw is a wrestler. Issei Tamura, a striker. When you're a striker fighting a wrestler, always have to be cognizant of the takedown. And Dillashaw was able to take Issei Tamura down earlier in the fight. Now, later on, he used the attempt of a takedown to finish the fight. He was shooting for a double leg, your most common takedown that you're going to see in MMA, and he faked down, very clearly looked down, a little switch of the feet, brought his shin bone straight up. Now, as Tamura is leaning down to sprawl, right? He wants to stuff that takedown by sprawling. He literally leaned his face right into TJ Dillashaw. Actually, it was a knee that he ate. It was a round kick that Dillashaw was throwing, but it was a knee kick that really it turned into, which is one of our most powerful techniques. Again, Tamura down. Dillashaw follows up, ref steps in and stops the fight. How do you use this? Well, maybe you're not a wrestler. Maybe you're not going to take your opponent down on the street, and that's perfectly okay. You'll learn takedowns as you progress in the curriculum. But a little later on, how do you use your striking? Well, what you can use for this is your low kicks. Use your low kicks. Throw your low kicks. And what happens, especially someone new on the street, doesn't know what they're doing, they tend to drop their hands, right? And kind of shrimp away from that kick like it's going to hit them. And then you can look at the leg and kick up high and bring that shin bone up to somebody's face. That's a good way to end the fight, as it did with TJ Dillashaw and Issei Tamura. Thank you, Craig, for helping me out there, right? Don't try and say that name 5 times fast either. It's like assistant. Big thing that I saw through the fights. There were like 12 or 13 fights that I watched. Always fun on a Saturday night, tuning in at 6:30. And, 1 o'clock the fights end, and just see fights nonstop. Big thing that I saw, if your hands are down, you're going to get hurt. And we saw it in 3 different fights. Chris Camozzi, Nick Ring. Nick Ring, very successful. But for some reason was fighting with his hands down the whole time. He lost a very close split decision. The difference of a couple of strikes in the fight. And he had his hands down. Like, you can't stop thinking about it. If your hands are where they're supposed to be and someone's punching at you, it's very easy to stop those punches. They're trying to hit your face. Your hands are in the way. Now, if your hands are down and they're trying to punch your face, it's very hard to stop that. And as well as Ring did, it was like just a little tiny difference. It didn't make a whole lot of sense. Another fight that I want to talk about with hands down, George Roop. He's like 6'2", 135 pounds. Makes no sense. Ruben Duran, always help me out with the names here. Ruben Duran, much more normal size, 135 pounders, like 5'6", giving up like 8 inches in height to George Roop, which is crazy to see. But George Roop got a little complacent. We see that a lot. Even with our own students that are much taller, they have a tendency to leave their hands down because there aren't that many people can hit him in the head. But Duran, and Roop's hands weren't down at his waist, they were just a little bit below his chin. And Duran, very quick, jumped in with a big right hand, turned the face of Roop, followed with a hook that hit right in the right eye socket. It was beautiful action. So if we switch sides, right, he threw the right hand, boom, and then he followed with the left hook and hit right in the eye socket. Now the eye is a direct line to your brain, so when you get hit in that eye socket like that, it can cause your brain to get a little wobbly. And we saw Roop, he was wobbly leg, he was doing like it was a better dance move than I could ever do. And Roop, to his credit, came back and won the fight. Lost the first round, won the second 2 rounds, won the fight, but why get hit? That was always my #1 goal, kickboxing, right? When I'm fighting, please don't hit me, but that's my job. I got to stop you from hitting me. And the first thing, put your hands up, right? There's some soft parts of your brain, eye socket, temple, jaw, anywhere below the hinge, right? That's going to hurt you. So when you put your arms on your body and you keep your hands up above your temple, you can block most of those shots that are going to come to that place. Last fight where this happened, Nate Marquardt versus Jake Ellenberger. Big fight for both guys. Marquardt just lost the finale of Strikeforce, so he needed a win. Ellenberger's trying to get a shot at the title himself. He's on a good winning streak. They're fighting. Pretty close fight. Maybe Ellenberger's won a little bit, but close fight. Marquardt hands just a little bit down. Now, Ellenberger, really smart. He didn't go right after the headshot because that hand can come up quick, right? You can react quickly. Instead, he forced the hands to go the other direction. He aimed down to the body and brought the hands down further and then came back to the head with a hook and a cross, right? Really, really good striking technique. Those hands are just a little low. Maybe only covering the jaw, but not the temple and the eye. So rather than aim for the head where Marquardt can react and go into a shell, he went to the body first. Hit the body shot, boom. Boom to the head. The left hook hit the temple. Right cross hits the other side of the temple. I mean, it was a really nice combination. Marquardt goes straight down. He follows up.
Try to get a leg, but then...
Yeah, it was in the middle trying to grab a leg, and and Ellenberger went right after him. And you know, one of the big things that you need to understand for a street situation, if you hit somebody once and they fall down, keep hitting them. Because people recover quick. We saw that, we talked about Roop. He got wobbly leg, but Duran wasn't able to follow when he got up. And you're going to go crazy and kill somebody, but you want to make sure, like when Ellenberger stopped, Marquardt was out cold. And that's important for you on the street. You're defending yourself is going to be a larger, probably larger, stronger opponent. You don't want to take any chances that they pop back up. Like Marquardt, 2 minutes, 20 seconds later, was complaining to the ref, why'd you stop the fight? Meanwhile, he was out cold. So you want to make sure that you protect yourself and make sure you don't give that person a chance to get back up again. Ellenberger did a great job of that, forced the ref to pull him off, stop the fight. Last fight we want to talk about. The main event, right? What a great fight. Nick Diaz, excuse me. Talk about this a little more later, but really just a punk. And GSP, really the embodiment of a martial artist, has taken all the weaknesses in his game that I got to see him fight years ago. Matt Hughes in Atlantic City, when he first fought for the title. I can remember when he knocked out Jay Herron years ago. He was a very one-dimensional fighter. Didn't have much of a ground game, didn't have a wrestling game, knew how to strike really well. And now he's known as a wrestler and a grappler. So he's really taken the weaknesses that he had and fixed them. And what he uses his striking for now is to control distance. So he's fighting Nick Diaz, who I'm going to portray because I'm a little taller. And we're going to let this guy be GSP because he looks like he's bald because his hair's so light. And how do you use distance? Well, you guys know that train with us that in our beginner and intermediate curriculum, we spend a lot of time just working on movement. In, out, left, right, left, right. Working around in a circle, using practice to build up the speed of our movement. And GSP did it beautiful. Diaz's big advantage was the distance of his striking. Not necessarily his skill at striking, but the distance of his striking. So anytime that Diaz would come straight in, GSP would go straight back, or even more commonly, would go laterally. He would move sideways. Now Diaz got to reset, and then GSP can move sideways again, right? He doesn't stand right in front of him. And then another thing he did masterfully, he got hit a little bit in the 4th round. Diaz started to find his range, and then 3 seconds after Diaz found his range, what's GSP do? Takes him down. So anytime that Diaz got in his preferred striking range, GSP either moves left or right, George St. Pierre, moves left or right, or back, not back off the note, because you're going to run into something. Or he would move in, which is a great direction to move. And GSP was moving in for the takedown, and he scored takedown after takedown after takedown. Diaz was able to stuff a couple of them, but never more than 1 or 2 in a row before he was back on his rear end. And something that we're going to work on in class all the time is the ability to control distance. As I said, you're going to learn how to do takedowns, especially as you advance in the curriculum. But more important for us in a street situation, you know how to control distance standing up. Of course, we're going to teach grappling on the ground too. So no matter where you find yourself, you're comfortable. And then wrestling as the last little bit there. How do you control what environment that you find yourself in? What did we see in the UFC 158? An evolution that's happening in MMA. UFC 1. I watched it on videotape, not live. I was like 20 years old then, didn't know anything about MMA, but watched it on tape. It's all submissions, right? Royce Gracie, submission, submission, submission. Guys didn't know submissions, they won by submission. Then a group of wrestlers came in, the Mark Coleman era, right? They would do takedowns in ground and pound. But on the ground, what are we seeing now? Stand-up. A lot of stand-up fights, with the notable exception of GSP, who spends a lot of time on the ground on top, but still very, very few submissions. In fact, in the 12 or 13 fights on UFC 158, not a single submission finish. Striking is becoming a much more integral part of what's happening as people start to learn basic submission defense. They understand what's out there, how to keep their arms in close to them, how not to give away a limb or give away their neck. And we're seeing the importance of striking. People know how to stop a takedown, right? You can learn how to stop a takedown much quicker than you can learn how to do a takedown. And people are using that to make striking a much more integral part of what they're doing. Again, I'm Thad Campbell. This is my assistant, Craig Alexander. We are instructors here at Tiger Schulmann's in Feasterville. If you ever want to come and take a class, check out our website, feastervillema.com, and let us know you saw us on Kickboxing Corner. We're going to give you a special sign-up deal, all right? Nice to talk to you guys, and I look forward to seeing you. We've got a little break now. Next fights aren't until April, but we got like 8 weeks of UFC fights in a row going after that. We'll talk to you guys then.